Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm sitting at the vise and I am going to tie some crappie jigs. Usually when I'm fishing locally, I'm not catching primarily crappie. It's usually a combination of panfish. You get some crappie, you get some perch, you get some bluegill, and sunfish. So typically I'm using, let's switch this here. Typically I'm using jigs like this. This is a 3/32, which is just a hair bigger than that 1/16 ball head jig that's pretty popular with crappie jigs. This is just some calf tail with a little bit of tinsel. There is a couple shops down in Florida that use the jigs that I tie for ice fishing here in New York State. Let's see if you can see that. And I tie this 1/8, what I call a football head, on a longer shank hook. Do I have one here? I thought I did. Here we go. So this 1/8 football, which is very popular here in New York State, we tie on this longer shank hook. Let's see, it's about how much longer. We tie in this longer shank hook for the guys in Florida, and it's just identical to our football, our pro football that we use for ice fishing. So it's just a hackle and just a touch of tinsel, and really nice jig for perch here in New York State. This hook is actually a little bent. But let's see, do I got a better one? Yes, I do. Here we go. So here's that same jig, just with a little bit longer hook shank that the guys just seem to really like down in Florida. The other jig that would be kind of a go-to would be squirrel tail, and this is a 1/32 football with the green dyed squirrel tail and just a touch of tinsel. Same 1/32 head with just a plain gray squirrel. And then this is also a 1/32, but a ball head with that green squirrel, no tinsel. So that's what I'm using primarily, fishing a jig under a bobber, and mostly maybe getting crappie, but there's other fish that are kind of mixed in there as well. Today I'm going to tie just a regular typical crappie jig. I'm going to put in the vise. Let's get set up here. I'm going to put in the vise a 1/32 ball head jig, and it's got the number 6 hook. And I'm going to start with some 2/0 red thread. Let me go to the red. So I have some Danville round nylon 2/0, and I can lock this on in the middle and trim this and walk the thread down just past the point of the hook, just past the point. The tail that we're going to add on this, call this jig the Black Beauty, and what I have here is some dyed turkey, and as you can see I have 3, let's see, as you can see, I have 3 of those fibers just split right there. I can peel it off the quill. I'm going to lay this on top of the jig, the length of the body past the bend of the hook. So I'm going to measure that. I'm going to measure that distance. Switch hands, and I'm just going to lock that on. Keep those fibers right on top of the hook shank. And you don't have to snip the butt ends off, but I will right there. Now, one thing that I add to this along with the black chenille is I'm going to add some medium gold wire. And you can use any type of gold wire. This is just UTC ultra wire and medium size. I have wire in my collection that I've had since I was a kid. Some of these might have belonged to my father back in the day from the 70s. This is a very fine copper colored wire from some sort of toy, you know, something with a little motor. He would just take the wire out and save it. This one, copper colored as well. This is more similar in size to this medium, maybe a little bit thicker. But I have an older pair of scissors that I don't mind getting all messed up. So there I just snip a piece of this gold medium-sized wire. I'm just going to lay that right down the side of the hook and just let it extend out the end. And then I will snip a piece of, this is Danville chenille. This is just plain black cotton chenille, or nylon chenille rather. The size on this, I believe, is a size 1 or a size 0. I have an old Danville sales packet with samples, and they used to pass out. It'd be about 10 inches long and about 1.5 inches, 2 inches wide, and it would have pieces of the chenille, each color that they offered in the different sizes. It's pretty neat to see. And then along with that was a sizing sheet that would just have rectangles on it. You just kind of lay this up on the sheet. So this chenille was close to a size 1 or a size 0. So we're going to lock that right into place. And then I will walk the thread all the way up to the head of the jig. And just let my bobbin hang. So now we have the chenille locked on and the wire locked on. At this point, you can add a touch of head cement, a little bit of lacquer, spar varnish, Sally Hansen's, whatever you're comfortable with using. I just use head cement pretty much for everything. Typically I tie these on my fly vise, which is a traditional fly vise, and I'll use the rotary mechanism on that to spin the vise to wrap the chenille. But I also want to show a different technique on finishing the wrap. Sometimes I'll watch guys tying at shows and whatnot, or just friends even that I know that tying crappie jigs, and they kind of fumble with their bobbin and the chenille and how they finish off the wrap. So I'm just going to take my chenille and I'm going to wrap it forward and just switch hands, left, right, left, right. and walk that chenille with touching wraps up the shaft of the hook. I don't double wrap. I like the proportions and the silhouette of the jig just to be more thin and streamlined, not really cone shaped. That's not what I'm looking to do. But I've wrapped this chenille up with touching wraps, and now this will be my last wrap as I go over. And so a lot of times guys will fumble with the bobbin and whatnot. This is the easiest way I know to finish off your chenille and lock it into place without much fuss. So on this last wrap, all the wraps have gone between the bobbin and the vise. On this last wrap, I bring it around and I will bring it to the outside of the bobbin and then switch hands. So I'm holding it with my left hand again. That leaves my right hand free to just pick this up and just lock it on as normal. There's not much need to crisscross your thread over your chenille and wrap it and twist it and wrap it, because once you lock it on here and you add a couple more wraps, those threads are walking towards the ball of the head, the jig head itself, and it's locking that chenille in place, and it's not going to go anywhere. And I just snip it off. Now with the wire, I usually bring it the opposite direction, so I'm going to bring it under the vise, and then with diagonal wrap, we're going to add a gold band of wire, and again with this last wrap, I'm going to bring it to the outside of the thread, so when I pick up my bobbin and wrap, it's locked that wire on really well. Very, very well, actually. And then with my junky scissors, I just give this a snip. Save that piece because we can use it on the next one. So there you have a little bit of color, and it's wrapped opposite on your chenille, so it will also help hold it into place. To finish this jig off, I have a hackle feather here, and what I would call, I don't know, this would be thinking about fly tying and fly tying terms themselves. If I measured this on a hackle gauge, I believe this is roughly a 10. So not the length of the feather itself, but it's the length of these fibers. And really what I'm looking for with the crappie jig is I want, if I just curl this around, I want those fibers just to extend to the point or just to touch past the point once if I wrap it. So that's just a good way to measure it. So what we'll do is we'll take this feather and we'll strip off the bottom portion and we'll nip it. And you just hold it up to the head. And I put 5 wraps over the stem of this feather and then at least 1 good wrap on the outside of the little piece that's been locked down. So it's now sandwiched between my thread. You grab your hackle pliers, and I will use my good fancy ones. If you can find these pliers, these are the best hackle pliers I've ever used. I have a couple pairs. I probably have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 pairs sitting here on my desk. They're all different brands. They're all good for tying hackle. This pair never slips. So if you can find, I don't remember what this is called. This is a fairly recent. I bought this only a couple years ago. But I'll lock this on. And we're going to palmer this feather. 1, 2 full rotations in front of the bobbin. So now when I pick up the bobbin and I angle the thread so it kind of brushes against the head of the jig, it's locked that feather into place. And as you can see, this tip just broke right off. But because it was locked on, it wasn't going anywhere. So I keep a hold of this when I can, just so I can nip off that end. Put this on my good table. Don't lose it. Now to finish this off, you can whip finish by hand. Use a whip finish tool. I'll do it the same way I always do my jigs, and I just take a length of size A thread of a different color. Put it under the last wrap and pull it right up to the top of the jig. The fibers will stay out of the way. And this only needs 1, 2, 3 wraps to hold it into place. And as I pulled the bobbin around, I let it, again, rub against the head of the jig and just slide down. So I'm already pushing all those fibers back. I didn't have to worry about holding the fibers back with my fingers. Nip my tag end and pull this through. And then I can take my X-Acto knife and just nip this. You could exaggerate a little bit, go with a little bit longer hackle if you wish, but I think it's worked out really well for us. How this hackle, here's where the tip lines up, so it extends just a hook eyes past the tip of the hook. That gold gives it a little flash, which is nice. And once this gets in the water and the tail gets wet, these 3 duck quills separate and kind of shake in the water. So even if it's just standing still underneath the bobbin or underneath the bobber when you're fishing, and the boat rocks a little bit and that bobber bounces just a little bit, those fibers are all moving just a little, or you give your rod tip a shake, all these fibers just going to shake a little bit in the water, and along with that gold wire is where you get your strikes. So just to finish this off, again, my lacquer based head cement and just a few drops on this red thread around the head. Now I paint my eyes. I use fluorescent paint over the most all colors that I paint my jig heads, but if you had stick-on eyes or the UV light eyes, that would be fantastic as well on this jig. So very pretty jig. There you have it. It's what we call here locally, we call it the Black Beauty. It's a nice jig. It'll catch fish all day long. So if you enjoyed what we did here today, go ahead, put some comments down below, like and subscribe so you don't miss any new content. And until next time, guys, tight lines.